So today I'm going to redo this triptych painting that I made. This was supposed to be for a wall in my house. I don't think you can see the blue wall in my house. And I ended up overdoing it, and I didn't stop when I should have, and so it's still beautiful. I ruined it for what I wanted it for. The color was too much, too dark. So instead I redid the whole thing on new canvas, but I have these, and they're still really beautiful pieces, but I don't have a need for them anymore. And so I've decided to take them and I'm going to divide them into each their own unique piece of art. So I'm going to take it and just kind of experiment and do 3 totally different things and see how they turn out, and just have some fun with it, because I'm not going to waste them. They're still really cool, and I love them, but I just don't need them for what I needed them for anymore. So might as well have fun with them, and we'll see how it turns out. All right. So I'm starting this video. I forgot to start it a few minutes before this, but we didn't really miss anything. I just taped off a few sections with painter's tape. That way, when I paint over top of it, I'll be able to lift it and kind of see what effect that creates, where you can still see a lot of the texture underneath, because I think it's a lot of amazing texture and color and layers going on, so I don't want to lose all that. And I'm not going to paint over the whole thing, but that'll give me some specific designated areas, and some really cool lines will be created. So for this, I had been inspired by a lot of different paintings that I've been seeing where people use amazing colors and they're just bright and vibrant. And I am constantly drawn to magenta and purple and blue. It's just kind of, I don't know if you're drawn to certain colors and you always find yourself returning to them, but that is for sure the color scheme that I'm drawn to. And I love seeing other people's paintings where they use other colors. And so I usually try to incorporate them, but I really had decided for this section of the painting, I was going to just go wild and experiment. I always try to look at the color wheel. I've never had any specific art training or color training. So I think what I've read and learned from other YouTube videos is that that's a really important piece where you see paintings with amazing color combinations. It's important to kind of use that as a reference, or else you're painting, you think you just grab a handful of colors and you think they're going to turn out awesome, and then they don't. So right here I've incorporated a light green, and then now I'm using a brighter yellow. I just use the standard paints, Artist Loft level 1 paints that you get at Michael's. And again, back to my knives, because those are my favorite tool. With the knife, I feel like the spread that you can get of your paint creates just an instant texture. And when you swipe it, it's going to, the surface area that it covers is going to have just an instant texturing effect. So I apply it with that, and then I always like to go in and make just various lines, vertical, horizontal. I feel like it just gives the painting a little bit of structure. And what I'm also still practicing is my blending techniques. So you'll see I'm going to first do my applications of various colors with the knives. So I'm spreading, and then I go back over top of the lines that I've already created. And then each time I add a new color, I will go back, and at some point I touch upon an area that I've already been into. I think it creates a nice flow and consistency and wholeness to the painting, kind of brings everything together. And so I applied some light blue there, and now I'm coming in with some darker blues. It's a bright blue. And I like to just go right over top of those other paint colors. They're still wet, they're fresh, and I just lightly slide it and swipe it. And now I'm actually using a plastic fork, because when you're doing art, anything is a tool. But I don't want to over swipe it, because if you do, then the colors really start blending together, where I want it to be kind of a choppy pull through. That's the effect that I really like. So I used the blow dryer so that I could get it dried a little bit, so that I could come back through just with a brush and feather the edges. I think I over feathered that yellow and green a little too much, and then so I learned from that I wasn't going to go to the inside of the blue, because I like that big streak of dark blue in the light one. So now I'm going to come through with my next favorite tool, which is actually a cheese knife. It was from a cheese platter, and it's just got such a wide top, and none of my knives have that, and so I have now stolen it for my art supplies. So I love that cheese knife. It creates great pulls, and I go back through and I'm just softening some edges, adding some nice lines. I go back over those lines, just it creates a really cool depth effect and texture, I think. So I'm going to add some more blue. It's kind of hard to see there what is the blue tape versus what is the blue paint, because they're pretty similar in color. But you'll see once the tape comes off. So now over top of everything, I'm going to add a little bit of white. Now, for me, I have a hard time. I want to make sure that I add the white as a nice contrast, but I don't necessarily want it to blend in with the color. So that's just something I experiment with every time, and I really play around with how hard to push, how flat to make my knife, because the flatter I get it, the less surface area the paint tends to touch, where it kind of brushes over top. So now this is my silicone wedge, which is another favorite tool of mine. I love it for spreading paint around the canvas. And I'm coming up in that top corner. It just creates a really nice dark contrast to the light greens and yellows that are over there. And so with there already being so much texture on my painting, I was having a hard time getting nice coverage, so I had to put the wedge down and go back to a knife just for harder applications. And I love to swipe the edges. I think it just creates a really cool feathering, striping, kind of blown away effect. So you'll notice on a lot of my paintings, that's just a favorite technique of mine. So now we're going to go back in and add some magenta and some purples. So I added a light purple and a violet, and I'm blending them together. Blending over top of that tape was a little tricky, because it would catch at times, but I think it's just part of it, and it gave it actually a cool pull effect anyway. So I've got a light magenta there. I love the blending of the violet and the magenta, and it's one of my, again, you can see the base color, it's pretty much the violet and the magenta, and so I can't not have a big section of the painting be those colors. And I'm going to go through with the white and those pulls. So I lay the brush or the knife on its side and just pull up nice and with very little pressure, and then the paint just tends to catch on any high surface areas. So it creates that really cool effect of almost like a sponging, but without any pattern or rhyme or reason. That's another favorite look of mine that tends to show up in most of my abstract paintings. So I'm coming back in with the knife and I'm adding color to the other side of the pieces, and I threw some black in over there, and I'm going to take that, and just the black contrast is nice against those really bright colors. So I take it up against the edges, against the already made vertical and horizontal lines, and I pull and I see what happens. You know, when I'm painting, I have a vision in my mind of how I want it to go, but once you start painting, and it's a loose vision, I should say, but once you start painting, I just kind of go where it takes me. I think that's the fun of it, and that's the excitement and exploration of it. It's a process, which is why you'll also notice that I usually am dancing at the time to time, and when it's sped up, it looks silly, I get it, but I just enjoy dancing and listening to music while I'm painting. So here we are taking off the tape, and it comes right off. It didn't cause any issue pulling off with my colors or anything. and I had a couple different layers, so I had to pull it off just to make sure it was going in the right order, and it left just this really cool undertone. So I'm going to take my knives and I'm going to smear the paint that's already down there over top of some of those to kind of soften the bluntness of the lines, which you still get that effect. Oh, I smeared some of that purple and I wasn't wowed about it, so I went and just tried to wipe it away, and then I overdid some white over top of it, and then the magenta, which actually looked fantastic. It's super bright. It's also always good to pick up your painting and take a breath and just look at it from different angles, move it around. And I realized I wanted some more black, some more contrast. So with my cheese knife, I take it and I'm just making some more additions with black. I want that contrast. I want it touching the other colors to really create that popping effect. And we sit back and we think. Now, one thing that you won't see in this video was after I walked away from the painting, I stopped recording and I thought I was done, and then a little while later I walked back to it, and some of the texture that you see on the original was created by a stencil. You can see it's kind of in that bottom corner, and I realized that I wanted some more of that stencil to be on the top layer. So in the final picture, I actually overlap that stencil over the black portion, and I do some white and magenta, and then I swipe it, and it just really finished the painting off. It was just the chef's kiss to the end of the painting, so I'm so happy with how this turned out. We just have this vibrant, beautiful, color-popping picture, and it's exactly what I wanted. And it took a picture that was creating some heartache from me overdoing it, and now this is what we have, and I love it. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please leave me some comments or suggestions. You can like and subscribe, and I hope that this inspires you in your next painting and you enjoyed it. Happy painting!